street, they were completely rammed. They were filled up to the gunnels, they were queuing down the street. They said, you should have been here last week. I swear, you should have been here last week. Oh yeah, you should have been here last week.
Welcome to the latest edition of the podcast You Should Have Been Here Last Week, presented by me, Steve Gribbin, and my fellow comedian, Paul Ricketts.
Hello.
This is the podcast that peers behind the glittery comedy curtain of the comedy industry and gives us a glimpse of the shenanigans, the controversies, and the hot-button topics that have set the comedy world alight. And today's guest, we're very happy to welcome the stand-up comedian, actor, writer, voiceover artist, and bon vivant, the marvellous Mr. Alan Francis. Welcome, Alan.
Good afternoon to you, gentlemen. Good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to add to that, of course, that you're also a Hearts fan.
Oh, yes.
A chess fan, not the musical, but the actual game.
Yeah. The musical, I'd give it a whirl, the musical.
Basically, what got you into stand-up comedy in the first place, Alan? How did you start?
I studied to be an actor, in Manchester. At what was then called the Manchester Poly. I was doing a drama course there, and it was all a good laugh. I was in the same year as Coogan,
Wow.
Steve Coogan, that is, just in case you were thinking of someone else.
Dave Coogan.
Dave Coogan, yeah, he now runs the bakery. Yeah. All right, Dave. Yeah. I see my fucking namesake. Yeah, that namesake of mine's doing well.
Here's your bread. Aha.
Yeah. Here's your bread. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Knowing me, knowing Yuletide logs. And so I was lucky enough to get work as an actor fairly straight away when I left college. Went down to Wales and did a tour of the West Country in Wales and. A play, not very good play, but there was a good laugh. That's often the way with actors, isn't it? You're in a terrible production of something absolutely awful, but it's always a good laugh.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to London in '89, I sort of got into stand-up. It was really I met Sean Hughes, and he was. Used to drink in our pub, a local pub in North London. And I met him before. I didn't know he was a comedian. He said he was a comedian. I was like, all right. And he gave me and this girl I was seeing at the time free tickets to go and see his show at the Red Rose Club.
Oh, wow.
So I saw him there, and he was brilliant. And I can't remember who else was on the bill, but I remember thinking, yeah, I should try this. I obviously wasn't in the same league as Sean. I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. But I thought some of the other people on the bill, I thought I could be like that. I could get on a bill with Sean. I couldn't follow him, but I could maybe go on before him. I thought.
It's quite unusual for actors to go into stand-up, isn't it?
It is because actors always make that mistake of sort of learning their jokes as a script. I mean, you must have seen that, when some drama student comes down to do a new material night or something, and they have this sort of script that they've learned with joke, and it's awful because the thing about stand-ups is you're in the room. That is the biggest difference between an actor and a comedian. An actor is in the play. If you're doing sort of like a Tennessee Williams play or something, and there's some people come in late, you don't go, "Hey, where have you been, mate?" We started 10. You don't do that when you're doing Tennessee Williams. You stay in the play, whereas the comedian is allowed to say, "Where have you been, mate?"
Yeah, this is very true. Do you know, by the way, it used to be terrible. Malcolm Hardy used to have a terrible thing at the Tunnel. He used to say, next act on, actor, and that was it. They were dead.
Yeah, that was it, actor.
I don't think, fuck off.
I never told, a sort of volley of ice cubes. Malcolm's club was great up the creek, and but he would do that. He would often, especially with open mics, he would always set them up. I've just been talking to this guy at the bar, and he seems confident. I don't know why. I don't know why he's confident, because he looks a bit shit to me. Here he is, you know, and it's like.
Oh God!
And it was like Daniel in the Lion's Den, except Daniel who wasn't able to take the thorn out of the paw. You know, it's like imagine if Daniel wasn't able to do that.
Oh God!
He would have just been eaten.
Yeah.
So did you do a course, or did you just sort of throw yourself into it?
I threw myself into it. I didn't do a course. There were courses in those days. There weren't many. There was one at Jackson's Lane, and I sort of looked at that. You know, and there was an advert for it somewhere, which I looked at. But I didn't do it. Mainly because of meanness with money, I think. You know, I just thought, I'm not going to fuck. You know, I'd rather just go on and die on my arse, which I did do many times. And, I got some, the very first gig I ever did in London, I'd done a bit in Manchester. I'd sort of compared the Student Union bar there a couple of times, and brought on some strange act like Coogan as well. John Thompson, who was sort of starting out these days. There's a guy called, you might remember a guy called Attila the Stockbroker.
Yes, I do.
Still know him.
yeah. He used to do gigs in Manchester at that time. Henry Normal, doing his poems and stuff like that. And there was a Student Union bar, which I did a bit of emceeing, but I felt the pressure wasn't on me, because I was very much kind of like, these guys are funny, I don't have to be funny. It was only when I came to London and started to try and do, sets, open spots instead, that I sort of got a bit more nervous about it and thought, fuck, you've actually got to, you can't just sort of introduce an act and get away with that. And one of the first ones I ever did, there was a guy called Jimbo on, who you must know.
Yes. We
have talked about it. We have talked about it many times.
Jimbo Beaumont.
Yeah.
Jimbo Beaumont. You know he's 81 now, Jimbo.
Yeah, yeah.
I did a gig with him not that long ago. I was doing some new material. Jimbo was there. It was so lovely to see him. I feel so affectionate towards Jimbo now. I mean, I didn't so much then. But now it was so lovely to see him. Because he never says the same thing twice, Jimbo. He comes on and rambles a load of incoherent nonsense that's not really funny. But all the comedians at the back are all pissing themselves laughing. They're all laughing. And I found myself doing the same again. And there was a woman who was comparing, and she lit Jimbo. This is just the other week. He lit him. And I was so disappointed. I was like, no. Let him carry on, even though the audience were absolutely delighted that he was removed. But I was at the back going, "Oh, let's have more Jimbo." But one of the first open mics I did in London was at the King's Head in Crouch End, and Jimbo was. I followed Jim, which I have to say made it a bit easier because. You know, I was very nervous about it. And then Jimbo went on, and I thought, well, whoever follows this is,
Yeah. Oh, God.
So, anyway, Rupert Murdoch could follow Jimbo.
That'd be a good act by Rupert Murdoch. Take my wife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, you did actually win So You Think You're Funny, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And in those days, because there were fewer stand-ups about, it wasn't so much if you were good, it's just if you weren't shit, you could get gigs. And you would do open spots, and a lot of people would say, yeah, that wasn't shit. Can you do 20? And you would say yes, even though you couldn't. And they'd give you a gig. And you would do gigs. So actually, between the September of 1990 and by the time Christmas came that year, I was gigging quite a lot and getting better. And so the following year, 91, I then sort of was getting fairly competent at it, and decided I went up to Edinburgh just to do open spots, really, just to do some gigs, because my old man still lived up there, so I could stay up there for free. Somebody told me about the So You Think You're Funny, and it was Karen Corrin running it. and I just went along to the Gilded Bloom, where it was the counting house. Do you know that next to the pear tree?
Yeah.
That's where the heat was, and it was me and an American comedian called Harmon Leon, who I don't know if you remember him. Just Juice. You remember that he used to go, Just Juice. What? No walnuts? Just juice?
What a catchphrase.
No blueberries? What? No, just juice? That's it? And there was a product at the time called Just Juice.
Just Juice.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah. Who else was on your heat? Who was in the final?
There was him, Harmon Leon. There was me. There was a mainstream Scottish guy, I can't remember his name. He was called something like George Cammy. Ed Byrne ran a gig at the 13th Note in Glasgow, which I'd done. And that's where I first saw George Cammy. And George Cammy, he was a mainstream Scottish comedian who would sort of go on and say, I tell you, my mother-in-law's a right fat fucking bitch, and all this, and all these students would be sort of looking at him. And then he said, "Oh, I know with you young people, it's all politics, isn't it?" And he goes, "It's all politics. That's what you want, anyway." John Major, what a fucking cunt! That was his joke. And so he was on, and I think I was lucky enough to follow him and my heat at the counting house. I got on after George Cammy, and he was wearing a suit with kind of sequins in it. Like real showbiz kind of suit. And he sort of came on stage, and the audience kind of laughed in a kind of slightly cynical way. And he got the mic and he went, "Was that for me or the suit?" And it was downhill from there. That was his biggest laugh. Yeah. So me and Harmon Leon, that was all you had to do then. Was just we turned up and we put our name down. The judges were, I remember. The judges were, Karen was a judge, and Kevin Day was one of the judges. And Kevin Day was very complimentary to me. He said, "I really liked your stuff. I thought you were really good." And so I won the heat, and Harmon Leon was second. So me and Harmon progressed to, I think there was another heat that we had to do. And then I got into the final after the other heat. So, and the final, Arthur Smith headlining, that was quite nerve-wracking. It was Dominic Holland was in my final. Martin Davis.
Yeah.
No, Dominic. He was just so sort of. I'm not sure what to. Not sure what to do. Do I do the same as the heat? Yeah. Do I do the same as the heat or new stuff? What do you think? What's your advice? just do what you think's funny. Yeah, no, really, yeah. Because, the judges are the same. They might just think, it's the same old, same old.
We should have added that to your to the roll call of your talents. You are a very, very good mimic, aren't you?
Well, there's one or two I could do. I mean, I always loved Dominic Holland because I remember once walking along Oxford Street once, and he was walking the other way, and he was always obsessed with stand-up, as you do get. But this was in the 90s, and he came up to me and went, I said, "Hi, Dominic, how are you doing?" And the first thing, he didn't even say hello, he just went, "I was at the Banana last night." And, this guy just shouted out. He just shouted out in the middle of my set. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? I'm like, oh. Anyway, I suppose you sort of do a heckle put down line. But yeah, so it was funny because Martin Davis, who I thought was absolutely fantastic that night in the final of the So You Think You're Funny, he was really developing his thing where he was he would have like 2 or 3 people in the audience that were, it was like spinning plates or something. It was quite a skill, and I just thought he blew the roof off it, to be honest. And Dominic Holland did well. Solid job. Solid. And I had a good one. It went well. I mean, it was a great gig. I mean, the audience are really up for it. And Arthur Smith's a good compere. And Then they announced the winners in reverse order, a la the old Miss World thing. And third place was Harriet Bowden. Do you remember Harriet?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I remember
Harriet Bowden
well.
was on a very posh,
Incredibly posh.
English lady. And she, maybe it was I don't know, I was a bit, just being a bit chauvinist or whatever, but I didn't think that she would be placed, particularly with the way she did. But I think it was probably important, especially at that time, to get more women fucking doing stand-up. But she, and there was a guy called Little Dave who finished second.
I remember him.
And he had these little poems, a bit like a kind of, he was a Cockney, but he was a bit like John Cooper Clarke, except a Cockney version,
Yeah.
And he was quite sort of, his poems were good and relevant and sort of political satire and stuff. So he finished second. And I was just thinking, well, fine, either surely Martin Davis or Dominic have won this. But and my money was on Martin Davis because he blew the roof off it. But they announced I was the winner. I was quite shocked. Quite shocked. But so I was quite pleased to have won that against such good opposition. I don't know if Martin Davis has ever forgiven me for it, but I think he thought he was. I can tell when he came into the sort of green room after he'd come off stage, you could see on his face that he knew he'd fucking done well.
We often ask people about this, and we've had loads of guests on this podcast. We ask them, what do you think about the proliferation of those sorts of things now in comedy? There's loads and loads and loads of competitions. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I don't know. I think there comes a tipping point where it ceases to be a good thing, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's good to encourage new acts. It's good. I think having things like funny women is a good idea. To encourage that. It maybe gets to the point where it's for some clubs and for some promoters, it's a way of just selling tickets without having to pay anyone. So it can be a bit. Maybe I'm being a bit cynical there.
No, I don't think you are being cynical.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on because.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of that. Yeah, we'll have but I think generally speaking, you must remember every Wednesday, No Faulkner's. No Faulkner's, you shouldn't be in fucking stand-up. He was fucking nuts, no. But his Wednesday night was really good. Because he had this format where it was free for the audience to get in. So there was a decent crowd. There was a headliner who was last week's winner who got 50 quid. And you went on. And the thing was, it was quite a good... It was one of the best new act nights around. I mean, there weren't many then, were there? But it was a really good new act night because it was quite a busy night. And he'd have a good compere. That was a good night every Wednesday at the Comedy Caf. First time I ever saw Nick Wilty was there. First time I ever saw Rona Cameron was there. And you could tell as soon as she got on stage, you thought she's going somewhere. Because she's a woman, and there weren't enough women at that time. And she had that kind of comic. She had that. She had whatever it was.
You eventually supported her on tour, didn't you?
I did. I went on tour with Rona. That was hilarious. Much more hilarious off stage than on. Certainly from my point of view. Rona was always pretty good. But no, we played. I remember we played golf together, me and Rona, in the Cotswolds, and it was this really posh golf course, and it was because Rona was like, I'm really into golf. Let's have a game of golf. I was like, okay, let's play golf, and. We went to this posh golf course, 100 quid a round if you weren't a member. And I went up to the guy. I gave him this because my father was a member of quite a posh golf club in Edinburgh called the Royal Burges. And I sort of said to this guy, I put on this kind of slightly more sort of refined Scottish accent. And I said to him, remember, my friend and I we're down here from Scotland, and I'm a member of the Royal Burges. House in Edinburgh, and we were just wondering if it would be possible to sample your course. And this guy, he was sort of taken in by this, and he sort of went, he was like, yes, absolutely. He said, now I tell you what, I can give you a guest fee, the green fee as a guest fee of £25 instead of
Bloody
£100.
hell. Wow.
And we were like, yeah, brilliant. So we went out and we were playing the course, and Rona's like binging the ball off, 45 degrees into the woods that way, and then pinging it off that way. And we're slow. Let's just say we're slow. It takes us, it should take you about 10 or 15 minutes to play a hole in golf. It took us about 35 minutes to play the first hole. And then we were sort of got to the second hole, and there were these two posh guys who caught up with us behind us. Should have let them through on the second hole, which was only a par 3, but we didn't. We played this par 3, so woof, over the back. Woof, and eventually the ball went in the fucking hole after about 80 shots. And we waved to them and we went on to the next hole. And then going up the next hole, they were really, really impatient. And I'd gone into the woods and I went to get my ball. And this guy, I could hear him shouting, "Do you mind if we play through?" And Rhoda sort of went, "What?" And he went, "Do you mind if we play through?" And she went, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And I dropped my club. And I was running as fast as I could, across the fairway to try and stop this car crash happening. But I failed. And as I got there, Rona said to this guy, "I feel sorry for your wife having to fuck you, you fucking posh cunt." And I was like, and it was like, and the two guys just went absolutely bright red with fury and left and walked up. They left the course, and they walked in the direction of the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And we sort of finished our round, and it took a good few hours for us to get to the 18th green and sort of.
Yeah.
And I borrowed my clubs from them as well.
Oh, no.
And I went into the sort of clubhouse, and Rona had been so offensive to those two guys that they hadn't even gone in and complained about her at the clubhouse. They just left, got in their cars and gone, because that same guy just went, "Oh, hello. Did you enjoy your round? Fantastic. Yeah. Do come and play again." So we got away with it somehow. But yeah, Rona Cameron. So that was just one of many, many incidents on tour with Rona.
You kept on doing the acting.
Yeah.
And you've done some pretty I think was it National Theatre of Scotland?
Yeah, the National Theatre of Scotland. I've worked with them a couple of times. Did a play called The Wonderful World of Dissociate, which I did with them, which was a thing that this guy, Anthony Nielsen, who I'd worked with before, had done shows with him at the Traverse and the Royal Court in London. And he was directing this play at the National Theatre of Scotland called The Wonderful World of Dissociate, which was a really ambitious kind of play about mental health. And the first half of the play was like this crazy kind of Mad Hatter kind of world of surreal kind of madness. And, we all played different characters in that. And it followed this woman through this world. And it was meant to be like inside her head, as she had some kind of dissociative disorder, mental illness. And then the second half of the play was like hyper-realistic, behind a glass screen with her in a bed and everything really realistic. And it was her recovery from it. And it was a really effective play. And we did that at the Tron in Glasgow is where we opened that. Then it went Royal Lyceum in Edinburgh, and then a national tour. So yeah, that was good. And I worked with them a couple of times after that, the National Theatre of Scotland. I did Alistair Beaton. Do you remember him?
No.
Did a play with him. There was a thing called Caledonia, which was about the Darien disaster, which was Scotland's attempt to get an overseas empire in the late 18th century, it was the late 17th century, 1690s. And it was a typical Scotland. It's just everything Scotland does turns to fucking shit.
You know that disaster is referenced in Roger Monkhouse's act, isn't it?
Yes.
He mentions it, doesn't he?
He talks about the Darien disaster, and it's quite funny because most people in the audience have no idea.
No idea.
They haven't heard of it. But yeah, Roger's fantastic the way he does.
He's great. He's fantastic.
He'll talk to some guy from Glasgow in the audience about the Darien disaster, and of course you put all your eggs in one basket. The guy's like, "What the? I've never heard of that. Who's Darien? Did he play for Celtic?" No. Theatre, I've done quite a lot of. Not much in the way of film and TV, but theatre stuff. The National down here, the Royal Court, I've worked at a few times in London, and in the West End, Warhorse. I was in the production of that West End production, which was great fun, actually.
You've also written plays, haven't you?
Well, me and Mike Haley wrote a play called Jeffrey Dahmer is Unwell, which we did at the end of the festival, and it was a surprise hit at the festival that year, and it was a farce. It was a bit like a Joe Orton style, quite dark farce about about two guys living together. One guy's obsessed with serial killers, and the other guy is actually the brother of a serial killer who's in prison, and the brother escapes, and to hilarious consequences. But that we did that up in Edinburgh at the festival. It was quite successful, and then we did it at the Hampstead Theatre in London and the King's Head in Islington, not the one in Crouch End. We did it there, and we sort of toured it about a bit, and that was that was pretty good fun. There was a production of it in America somewhere. Mike Haley was telling me about it. Someone put it on in somewhere really odd and conservative, somewhere like Texas or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it was a student production, University of Houston or something.
You use that phrase, somewhere odd and conservative. That describes most of America, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is odd and conservative place, isn't it?
I've just wondered. I mean, which one would you prefer out of comedy and the acting?
Comedy is really good in the sense that you feel that you've got freedom, and you can tour about, and you can sort of, when you're in a play, you're really locked into it for the whole thing, and if it's a long run, you can be sort of you feel sort of like you're totally kind of in their grip, if you like. I mean, the advantage of that is, the big difference is you get regular wages if you're in a theatre play or something like that. Whereas on the circuit, as you guys know, we're quite often chasing people who haven't paid us, things like that. And that's a real pain in the arse, that side of it all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it depends as well. I remember that Samuel Beckett was like the most demanding director ever. And if you said one word or even a comma, in any of his productions, he'd storm into the rehearsal thing. Right, start again. That was shit.
Yes,
like that amount of, some directors are like that. I know.
Yeah, some directors are like that, and knowing the lines absolutely. That's the other thing. It's like I was saying before about being in the play and not being in the room. And if you've got, like, I did a play a couple of years ago before COVID, and it was quite a mainstream kind of play. It was at a regional rep thing, and it was a thing called It was called Wait Until Dark. There was a film made of it. It was written by the same guy who wrote Dial M for Murder.
Oh wow! Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was like a sort of thriller. And it's called Wait Until Dark. Audrey Hepburn was in the film version of it, but she wasn't in our. But it was one of those things where technically it was quite tricky. The opening scene was a kind of a sort of two-hander, which turned into a three-hander, and it was about 40-odd minutes long. And there was a lot of lines to learn between the three of you, and a lot of business, and a lot of sort of props, and a lot of stuff. And that I found quite stressful compared to stand-up, because you're having to remember all this stuff and you're having to do all this. And if you did do a performance where like a matinee performance where a bunch of old ladies come in 10, 15 minutes late, you can hear them sort of going, excuse me, excuse me. Saying excuse me to every single person as they go along the line. Can you just say one excuse me for the whole row? And then, but you can't. You're in the play. And it is that, a comedian could get a bit out of that, whereas as an actor, you've got to stay in it. And there's nothing worse as well as an actor if you drive, you forget your lines. I was working at the Hampstead Theatre. This was ages ago. Joe McGann was in this thing that I was doing. It was a thing called Take a Chance on Me, and it was like a farce. And there was an old woman, Georgina Hale, was in it. I don't know if she died.
Yeah. Yes, she has.
Yeah, she was in it, and she was really lovely. Actually, she had a fantastic sort of career. Worked with all sorts of people, Alan Bates and people like that. Not the post office guy. She wasn't like, you want to stamps, love. No, she wasn't doing that. No, she worked with Alan Bates and Oliver Reed.
Oh my God! But
we were doing this play at the Hampstead Theatre, and there was a guy in it called. It was a sort of older. It was quite a posh British actor called Patrick Pearson, and he dried. And it was an opening scene, and it sort of got to his line, and he just. You could tell he dried because A, he just stopped, and then B, he started saying what wasn't in the script, and he started sort of improvising all this stuff, and everybody's just sort of on stage like, and he's improvising all this stuff until eventually he like somehow manages to get the train back on the tracks, and we're cooking on gas again, and everything's fine. And I was playing a kind of one of these characters who, like I often used to do when I was younger, where I played lots of different people who did different accents, and I'd be always backstage all the time, sort of changing and all this. And I was getting changed into my next costume. Actually, this still makes me laugh. It might not make you laugh, but I'm sort of there with my pants halfway up just over my knees, and he comes in and he puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, "I'm so sorry about my drive." And I was like, Patrick, I said, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't think the audience noticed, and everything's back to normal. And he went, it's just that there's a fellow sitting in the front row with the most enormous thighs. And for some reason, my eyes are lighted on his thighs. And it went out of my head. And I was like, fair enough. God. And then, of course, he's put this into my head. And then I come back out on the stage to do the next scene, and I just glance down into the guy. There's a guy sitting on the front row who's huge, like a massive, sort of like morbidly obese fucking guy. Yeah. Like massive, wearing denim hot pants.
Oh my God.
And this guy's thighs are absolutely they're not just, to say they were enormous is an understatement, right? And so of course as soon as I see that, I'm just like, and I can't stop laughing. And I just because of Patrick's ridiculousness, and I ruin the next scene because I'm just laughing all through it. This guy's enormous thighs.
Yeah.
But so these things they're quite funny. These sort of things that happen, but I think it's because you have to be so focused and you have to be in the show that when things go wrong, you do laugh and fuck up.
Well, I've got to tell one story. I was working on Phantom of the Opera. A woman comes up at the interval and goes, "My husband, who was sat in the front row next to me, I believe he's dead." And so,
he's still sitting in the front row, actually.
Still sitting in the front row. Tells the usherette, feels for a pulse, goes, "Yes, I'm afraid to inform you, your husband is indeed dead. But we'll call for an ambulance and we'll get a wheelchair, put him in a wheelchair, wheel him out. No fuss, no commotion. It will be done with the utmost sensitivity.
Yes.
And she goes, well, that's all well and good, but I've been waiting 6 months to see this show. Paid a lot of money. A lot of money for these tickets. Is it okay if we stay and see the second half? Because,
Oh my God.
Oh, you're joking.
that's what he would have wanted. I think
That's what he would have wanted. Just sitting there watching.
Theatre manager goes, oh, okay then, yeah, we'll just leave him there and we'll do it at the end of the show.
Oh my God.
But they had to tell all the performers backstage
By the
that
way.
there's a dead man sat second from the end on the front row. And,
Yeah.
of course, it completely changed the whole show.
You'd be like
Everyone went on stage. They were all dancing towards and looking at the second from
looking
the
at the
end
dead man.
front
What
row.
was he like that?
Yeah, he's just there. And it's almost... I watched the performance from the Wings going, this is a different energy. It's like,
Yeah.
like they're trying to raise the dead. And at the end of the number, he was suddenly...
Let's
gonna come back.
if we give it enough welly, we might be
Wake him
able
up.
to, we might be able to bring him back to life with a,
Is he really dead? Yes, he is.
you know.
And we all know that all three of us have played gigs where the whole audience have been like that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I actually know someone was on a train once with Alan Bleasdale, the famous playwright from Liverpool. And this was in the early days of mobile phone in the mid-sub 90s. And there's a guy on his mobile phone doing that classic sort of, yeah, run it up the flagpole. And Alan Bleasdale said, Alan Bleasdale walked the length of the carriage apparently, said, I've got a mobile phone, can I just have a look at yours? And he went, yeah. And he went,
Really?
yes. And it fucking smashed.
Oh man, and they cost a fortune in them days.
And then he just walked back to his seat. Yeah, he didn't give a fuck. He just walked back to his seat. The guy was going, yeah, he paid for it. Oh God,
Yeah.
We've all wanted to do that in comedy
Oh
gigs. haven't we,
God, yeah,
sometimes?
my God. Yeah, it's like the mobile. It upstages. It's like, you know, when you start. You know that when I first noticed that when you'd meet someone for a drink or something, and they'd be like. They'd sort of go, you'd be talking, you might be telling them, you'd be saying, you know, well, my father, you know, after a long illness, my father is, the guy's like, yeah. But after, you know, my father's been unwell. Yeah, he's been unwell, yeah. And after quite a long illness, we've had to, just a minute. And it's like, look, you're just, it's like, what the fuck? It's like the mobile is more important than actually meeting.
Well, MC was getting, bloke on the mobile, front row. MC decides to go, what are you looking at? What's happening on your mobile? Bloke goes, it's just this little thing I'm sending to my girlfriend. And, what are you sending? Oh, it's just a picture of me playing table tennis with my penis. Go on, you can have a look.
Oh, God, really?
And then the MC looked at it and he went, oh my God. I go, well, show us then. Show us.
The audience want to see that.
The audience want to see it, and it goes, well, the screen's not big enough for you to really see. And they go, well, so they ended up queuing to get to the front.
Really?
Well, he's showing this bloke playing table tennis with his penis.
He had a big enough penis to do it.
Yes, he had a big enough penis to do it, and ruined the show.
You could do backspins.
Mm.
It was top spin, few lobs.
I mean, we're talking about, mobile devices, etc. I mean, we always ask every guest on. I mean, what do you think about the influence of social media on comedy, or how is it affecting comedy?
Well, a lot of the young comics, they all say, follow me on Insta, don't they? At the end of gigs now.
Yeah.
Follow me on Insta. I'm on Snapchat. I'm on TikTok. And you get these people who are TikTok sensation. He's a TikTok sensation.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a gig at not a particularly big gig. One of that small one that it's above the Freemasons' Arms on Longacre. You still get paid by check. They give you a check.
Yes, you do, don't you? I forgot about that.
It's really weird, You put it in the bank and you're like, fucking hell, it's 4 days to clear. It's like, you still get paid by check. But yeah, I was there and there was a guy on in the middle and he was a TikTok sensation. Everybody said, oh, he's a TikTok sensation. And he sort of went out and he had like one joke, which got quite a big laugh. And then that was it. And he sort of went, oh, and he did a few things that sort of the law of diminishing returns. And then he went, oh, thanks, right off. And off he went. And he got quite a nice round of applause. But I think quite a few people in the audience knew who he was because they'd seen him on TikTok and he was a TikTok sensation. But I think doing stand-up is a different thing, isn't it? It's a different job in a way.
Yeah.
I think if you're a TikTok sensation and you can learn how to do stand-up, then that's probably a really...
We've mentioned Jack Skipper, who's a TikTok sensation, but he's also doing his time and learning how to be a stand-up.
And learning how to do stand-up. Yeah, I know.
Probably is, by now, a pretty decent one. So
it's like the old way, like we were talking about before, of doing open spots and getting... Maybe social media is quite a good way for young, or not necessarily young, but for new comedians to get some sort of following, get some sort of traction. I mean, there was some of the stuff that happened in lockdown. Like there was, what was it? Was there a woman? What was the woman who did the perfect lip syncing thing?
Oh, to Trump, yeah.
To Trump, yeah.
And that went really well.
That was very effective, wasn't it?
Yeah, it had the effect that we all wanted.
Well, it had, It's certainly, yes, he won the popular vote.
Yeah, I blame her.
Yeah, it's their fault.
I mean, like years ago, you might go on a car journey to a gig with a comedian who you didn't know that well, and you might say talk about something a little bit controversial, like politics in the Middle East or something like that, and they would say something that you disagreed with, and you would say something they disagreed with, but because you're both there sitting in the car, you didn't fall out because you kind of say, well, no, I take your point on that, but have you thought about this? And and, at the end of the day, no, you didn't completely lose it. But with things like Twitter and Facebook, this turns into a cesspit, doesn't it? It's like the argument, you end up hating people and they hate you. Now suddenly, because of social media, you go into a green room with them, and you got your eyes. Oh, I can't talk to him, And at the end of the day, you've just had an argument on fucking Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but on a lot of occasions they were cunts anyway.
Yes,
all it did was it just brought it to the boil, and now
you're
you
right.
finally know what a complete cunt that person really was. Will you miss him? In the green room.
Well, I always tried, I don't do it anymore. I don't argue on Twitter or Facebook, but I always tried to sort of say, have you considered perhaps
killing yourself?
Just killing yourself. Or I would try to be polite and say, have you thought about it from this? And they would just say, why don't you fuck off, you cunt? And it's like, you can't.
Yeah.
I know it has diluted. It's made the discourse toxic.
There's no nuance, is there?
Yeah. I'm going to say narrative now. Now I've used discourse and toxic. How long does it take you to turn over material? Do you do it religiously after a certain set amount of time, or it just happens? It evolves.
Well, it evolves, but I have been recently trying to deliberately, to push it over a little bit more. It does evolve, and quite a lot of bits, I will think of new bits while I'm actually doing it. And that's quite good. And quite often I'll have done a gig and I'll come off and say, what was that? What was that? Because when you've done a new bit and you go, what was that bit? What was that bit? And sometimes it's just, eventually you get it. But I am trying to do it more than I used to. I mean, for a long time, I think in the 90s, I probably had a solid 20-minute act that I did from about 1992 to about 2002 or something. I think it took me that long to sort of have the confidence to sort of on a Saturday afternoon to think, oh yeah, I could do that and do it that night. It took me that long, I think, to have the confidence to do that. To actually go out and do stuff that you've just thought of, But I know because you, Steve, you're doing quite a lot of topical.
It's one of those things. I mean, we were going to talk about this. I don't think at the moment it's so raw that I don't want to go and revisit my old Trump jokes at the moment. I just think,
No.
shit, what's the fucking point,
No, it's just awful, isn't it?
Yeah, we were saying it earlier that when people comment saying, well, it's good for comedy that Trump gets in.
Well, it's not really.
No, it's not.
They didn't say that. Did they say that when Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in 1933? Oh, yeah, it's good. At least we've got some material now. Fucking great,
So I'm going to thank Alan Francis for being our guest today. Thank you for turning up.
Thank you. But it was lovely to see you guys anyway.
Good to see you too, Alan. Yeah, fantastic.
And our paths will cross.
I look forward to seeing you at Dave Coogan's Bakery.
Yeah, Dave Coogan's Bakery. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, you should try his finger rolls. Very nice finger.
So that was Alan Francis. Lovely interview with him. People who will be listening or watching this will not realise that was 4 hours of interview, which I've now edited down into something a bit more manageable. And some of the stuff that's left out, really good that it's been left out.
Yes. And we do apologise to Dave Coogan, wherever you are. I'm really sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but he's only got himself to blame. Could have been the greatest actor of his time.
More into bread rolls, wasn't he?
Yeah. So now is the call to action, and to encourage people to take this call to action seriously, which is like, subscribe, follow, share with your friends. On our YouTube channel, we have 109 subscribers, and what I want to happen is to make 110. If we could make 110 subscribers at any point in the next year or so, it would make both of us happy, wouldn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just one of you. Come on.
One of you. We just need one of you to get into, because 109 is a prime number, isn't it? It's not divisible by anything, whereas 110, of course, is a much better number. So we're leaving this up to you, listeners and viewers, mainly the viewers, because they're the ones that can actually hit like on YouTube. Listeners, why don't you watch us on YouTube as well? And for the people who are watching on YouTube, why don't you listen to us? Because, you don't want to see our faces all the time. So that's it. That's the end, isn't it, really? We'll say goodbye to everybody. Listener, everybody. Viewers, anybody. People who don't even care. We'll say goodbye to you. We'll say goodbye to democracy. We'll say goodbye to America and the USA. Bye-bye.
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 They said you should have been here last week.